Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from Brewery Vivant out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Today's beer in question is called Devastation, and it is a barrel-aged Imperial IPA, something you don't see often. 9.2% ABV on this one, and it was specifically bourbon barrel aged in Buffalo Trace barrels, and they do tell us that they dry hopped it with Citra. Though I don't know if they also brewed it with Citra as the one and only hop, or if that's just a single hop for dry hopping and it's some other combination of hops. That I don't know, but what I do know is it's interesting. It's not often you get a spirit barrel-aged IPA, in this case a double, so I'm really looking forward to this one. As with all of the Brewery Vivant beers I have reviewed to date, I did get this one from Tavour. So label art on this is really cool. It's got kind of a, I don't know what this is, a monster with a hop in its hands. In the background is like a volcano, fire flames or something in like some knights looking guys. I don't know. It's very cool label art, I gotta say. Not sure the significance of the design other than the namesake Devastation, but it looks awesome. It sounds great. Let's get this cracked, and we're gonna use our nice tall all-purpose glass today. Bourbon barrel-aged double IPA. This ought to be interesting. All right, let's get this poured right in. Well, it looks like an IPA as I'm pouring it. No problem forming a head whatsoever. We're going to slow it down just a bit right about there. All right. Visually, yep, that looks like a classic IPA. It's a true bright golden yellow color. It's got a very tight, fine champagne-like carbonation that's rising up. I can see it, which obviously helped contribute to this wonderful head. The other thing I can tell you is there are massive aromas coming off of this beer. So I'm going to get right up on this for a full proper sniff. Okay, yeah. Okay, you can smell a little bit of the barrel on the nose, but it is absolutely dominated by the hop aroma. So it does smell very citrusy. There's a little bit of an earthiness in the back, but it's quite pungent. I did actually expect to be able to smell the barrel on this, but you know, it being an IPA and they dry hopped as well, those hop aromas could just be absolutely dominating the barrel. So we'll see when we jump into it, but yeah, it's there. It's just quite subtle. You get this very distinct citrus, kind of orange, grapefruit, lemon kind of aroma. Smells very citrusy. A little bit of earthiness in the back and slight bits of floral quality. There's no tropical fruit aroma, no berries on this one, but it smells very strongly of citrus and a little bit of that barrel you can pick up, but it is 100% dominated by that hop aroma. Head is nicely settled down here, so we're just going to jump right in for this first sip and see what this barrel-aged double IPA is about. Take one. Ooh, that's nice. Very unique beer drinking experience, very interesting, flavorful. I really like it. So before we even get into the flavor profile, let's talk about the body and the mouthfeel. This is 9.2% ABV. This one to me really just feels medium. I expected it to have a bit more presence than that, but it is what it is. It doesn't feel bad. It's just on the lower end of expectation given the ABV range. The mouthfeel, it's got a bit more resistance than the body has heft, but again, it's not quite as resistant as I expected. This one does not get creamy or foamy or silky, but you can feel that inherent resistance. It's not quite top tier, but it's above average. In terms of the flavor profile on this, it's very, very nice. So when you swallow, you're hit with an immediate presence of the hops. That is first and foremost. That would be very much a rarity on any other barrel-aged beer style, but on a dry hopped double IPA, I'm actually not surprised, especially given that the barrel aroma on this one was quite a bit more subtle than the hops. It does lead with the hops. It is an IPA after all. That, for my money, is a good call. So, flavor profile of the hops on this, it is very earthy with a little bit of citrus, and it is kind of a lemon and grapefruit mix. There's a little bit of the suggestion of a typical lemon and grapefruit flavor, but owing to this other underlying kind of earthy bittering trait, the bitters coming out of the hops is a lot more classic like you'd expect leaning on the citrus side. It's going to be citrus oil, citrus rind. The barrel does come through. Again, it's more subtle than the hop dominating, but it's not as subtle in the flavor profile as it is on the nose. So you can distinctly taste it. It distinctly tastes of bourbon. It's quite nice. It's an interesting flavor combination. One I can't say that I've ever had. One I can't say I ever would have thought that I'd have. But yeah, it's really nice. It's an interesting combination, and I do think that it works. Now, we'll talk about it when we get into the balance, but for my money, letting the style still speak and be the base star of the show, and that barrel aging is just kind of the added bonus, I think is a really, really smart play, and it makes for a much better beer, in my opinion. So, I'm going to jump in second sip, make sure I didn't miss anything. We'll talk about any other flavor nuances, and then we will talk specifically about the balance and the finish. So, take two. Yeah, citrus, earthy, very distinct hop, characteristic first. About the 2-second mark, the barrel starts to come in. Then you can taste them equally. And they're really on an equal playing field once they both pop in and there's the hops, now there's the barrel. They're holding steadily, kind of at that same level of intensity. Holds there for a few seconds before it starts its descent. And then once you get to about the 10-second mark, it kind of hits its plateauing kind of point. And again, it gets back to where the hop flavors dominate. It's got this citrusy kind of quality to it, this underlying earthiness. Those same bitter sensations are there. And I would say once you get that 10-second mark, give or take, it leads about 60-65% in favor of the hops to about 40-35% in favor of the barrel. And it kind of rides all the way out. The underlying malt bill, you can also taste. It's got a nice, clean, classic kind of grain, focused almost cereal-like flavor to it, which is a nice kind of neutral underpinning for a big beer like this, especially since they added this bourbon barrel aging. Clever idea. So yeah, the balance I think is spot on. I really like what they did. They let the base beer style be the star of the show. And again, this barrel aging is an added bonus, both for the nose and certainly in the flavor. In terms of the finish, this is longer than average, though it's not quite as long as maybe you would expect, given that it is both an IPA and also barrel aged. So I would say it's above average. It's not middle of the road. It's not top tier. That's where it stands. The intensity of flavor that's left on the back end of the finish, it is wet and round to the end, no dryness at all. But it kind of dissipates once we hit about the minute 15 mark. And where you're left with, as it dissipates down to nothing, is that kind of lingering underlying earthiness. The barrel is gone by that point, and the underlying kind of citrus qualities are gone. It finishes on that kind of earthy note, which is the dominant one that pops when you first sip anyway. It's very, very nice, guys. This is a very good beer. It's very clever. And I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. Balance, balance, balance. That is what separates a great beer from everything else. And I think that when you take something that A, is as inventive as this, never seen anybody else do it, but do it to where the beer style itself, the base beer, still is the star of the show, and then the barrel is the added bonus, it makes for a wonderful beer drinking experience. It's not a combination of aromas or flavors I ever thought I'd see, but I'm glad somebody did it because it is delicious. Guys, I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Brewery Vivant's Devastation, an Imperial IPA clocking in at 9.2%, and this one was bourbon barrel aged. They also Citra dry hopped it. Brewery Vivant, based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So yeah, guys, this was another great beer from Brewery Vivant, and this was very much a unique IPA drinking experience. I've never had a spirit barrel aged IPA, and it's not a beer that I ever would have thought that I'd see, but I grabbed it when I did, and I'm glad that I did. It was very unique. I wasn't sure how it would work, but the verdict is in, and it does work quite well. So overall, this beer did very well across the board. Just 3 categories I did not give a perfect 10 out of 10, so we will jump to the 3 in question. The first of those was the body. So this was 9.2%. That's a reasonably high ABV, but the body on this really didn't meet my expectations. Indeed, it was just kind of on the low end of medium, which was not robust enough for a 9% on any beer style, let alone a double IPA. I did say it was low end of average, and I gave the body a 4 out of 10. The mouthfeel was nice. It was above average, but it wasn't top tier. Definitely not low end, definitely not average. It was cleanly above average. You could feel the resistance, just not quite upper echelon, and I gave the mouthfeel a 7 out of 10. The final category I did not get of a perfect 10 was the finish. And, you know, this actually kind of surprised me a bit because there was a pretty good bit of hop intensity, of flavor, and bitters as well. Plus, the barrel aging side, you would expect it to be very, very long. But the fact that the finish wasn't as long, really, I think the beer was better for it because it really came down to the balance. They didn't overdo it with the barrel. It would be easy to override the hop aspects of the IPA. They did not do that. First and foremost, this was an IPA with the hops being the star of the show, and the bourbon barrel aging was kind of the side bonus interesting aspect of the beer. But it wasn't super, super crazy prevalent, so that the hops still spoke and came through first and foremost and clearly, as did the hop bittering. And then you had that bourbon barrel characteristic in the aroma and the flavor profile, but it was in the background. It was the cherry on top. So it wasn't quite as long as maybe you would expect, certainly for a barrel-aged beer, but you know, the bitters weren't super intense either. But that being said, it was above average, and I did give the finish a 7 out of 10, which of course leaves a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 7 categories. That's aroma, taste, head and retention, appearance, balance, my subjective thoughts, and example of style. So the total score on Brewery Vivant's Devastation is an 88 out of 100. Guys, well above average and a very unique and interesting beer. I have never had a spirit barrel-aged IPA, and I wasn't sure how well it would work, if at all, but the verdict is in, and yes, it does work, especially if you use a very deft hand with the balance of it. They didn't leave it in the barrels too long. So you got the aspects in the aroma and the flavor profile, but this is first and foremost an IPA, and I think that the beer is all the better for it. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications by hitting that bell icon. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.